Okay, cool. So everything's good. Yeah, right. So before we start, allow me to introduce our esteemed guest, Anirudh Varma. So Anirudh is a 26-year-old contemporary pianist, composer, producer, and performance studies scholar based out of New Delhi. He is a grade 8 pianist from the Associated Board of Royal School of Music. He is the curator and creative director of the Delhi-based contemporary Indian classical ensemble, the Anirudh Varma Collective. The ensemble curated by him has been the subject of academic research and writing for students and researchers across the globe. He's also a faculty member at the Global Music Institute and One College of Music and One World College of Music. Sorry, my bad. His performance repertoire is unique in nature since he is equally accomplished in both Indian classical, Western classical, and contemporary music. His performance is seamless collaboration of these three genres of music. So yeah, Anirudh, would you like to start now? Before that, if you want to tell anybody anything.
Yeah, can you all hear me? Is it fine? Audio is fine? Is it fine for you?
Yes. A little bit of a note for the people who are on Airmeet. If you're feeling any difficulty in hearing or viewing the entire session, there is also a YouTube stream that is live. You could find that if you go onto our Instagram page, and also it will be attached to this chat window soon, in case you're having an issue hearing or viewing anything over here. So with that out of the way, I'll also get out of the way similarly, so you can proceed with the class.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here today, taking this session. I was actually asked on what do you want to take the session on, and I was wondering, and then I thought maybe something that I'm currently heavily focused on would be a good idea to actually proceed the session with actually. So, today's session is on arrangement, on musical arrangement, and as the session moves further, we'll further move on to talk about uh, creating arrangements and writing arrangements specifically in the context of Indian classical music, which is what my current heavily my current work palette is focused on at the moment. Do let me know if there are any problems in terms of audio or video at any point. There's a lot of technical routing that is happening at the moment. So, yeah, and okay. So today's session is sort of divided into a few segments. The first bit I would like to talk about is actually what is arrangement in itself, and where does that arrangement even come from. So to begin with, arrangement. Where does arrangement what is arrangement? If we think of it from a musical and a non-musical point of view, and why I'm saying non-musical is because I want to try and keep this session a balance of technical and as open-ended as possible, so that it's. I strongly believe that when we're in the arts, we should try and relate any piece of art to our daily existence in life. That makes it a lot more interesting, a lot more personal that way. So, okay. So before we get into that, so what is an arrangement? For me personally, when I think of arrangement, it comes down to various elements, could be musical or non-musical, coming together and forming a unique identity of those elements together. So those elements uh, could be one element, could be two elements, could be, for example, a voice and an instrument, could be a voice instrument or two instruments, for example, and could be no voice at all and three instruments. So for me, arrangement comes down to organization of my musical thoughts into a structured form. So when I say structured, I mean there is some thought, there is some intent to it. So when you think of arrangements, it begins with a composition, with a small composition. Uh, And when your composition starts taking a more structured, a more organized form, okay, let's not say structured, let's say a more organized form in terms of thought, that is when an arrangement is formed, in my personal opinion. Now, it's so subjective because very often uh, because arrangements can be so vast, so diverse that uh, it can go from anywhere. In fact, so when I look at an arrangement, I'm thinking of, okay, how has so and so composer sort of put their thoughts down, either on paper, because arrangement can also, well, in the more traditional way, and even in today, like when, for example, a string section, a set of violins, cellos, violas sit together and record a piece of music in the studio, or even play live for that matter, they are not following their year. They're following an entire structured piece of music, which is the arrangement. So on that piece of music, on that piece of paper, sorry, they'll have what we call the entire set of the what they call the staff notation there. And in that staff notation, they'll always write down, okay, violin 1, violin 2, for example, cello 1, cello 2, violas. And more often than not, all of those elements are not playing at the same time. And that is what is arrangement. The thought, the intention behind how do you want to present your piece of music. You might have a composition, for example, now it comes down to, do I want to stick what do I want to add to this? Do I want to add something to it? The question there is, I have a melody, I have a melodic structure, I have a melodic idea for that matter. What do I want to do with that? Do I want to add just a few small bass root notes? Do I want to add a very heavy chordal idea? So, two examples of what I can do with that. The melody is, okay. Now I can do two things with it for the moment. Let's start with two things. That's one. Sorry, yeah. Now, how were those two things different? One was just holding that melodic structure together by, you can imagine a bass player playing those roots, which was, versus the other one, which was a lot more chordal. It was heavy in terms of chords. It had a lot more harmonic structure that way to it. Now that comes down to, what are you as a composer or an artist or a band or a choir trying to achieve in that moment, in that segment. So formation of ideas, the intent, what is the motivation behind that particular arrangement? Are you trying to, what is it that you're trying to actually showcase? And another thought behind arrangement is, if you, a lot of us, I do that as well, look at arrangement in terms of themes. So sometimes when I'm working on a piece of music, it might be very, for example, if I'm working, so when I'm producing another artist's song, that artist will come to me and ask me, Well, so actually, I asked them before I even approach it. I'm like, what is it that you want to say through this composition? And then sometimes the idea is very subtle, very minimal, for example. So I was working on a singer songwriter's track recently, and she said, I want this to be very subtle, very open, very earthy. Okay, so very open, very subtle, very earthy. Three keywords in my mind, which comes to my next point. Keywords is very, very important for me when I'm thinking of an arrangement, because keywords are like colors, are like, okay, so uh, green, yellow, purple, three colors. Now, I want to try and achieve green, yellow, and purple through my arrangement. Same way, she said, earthy, open, minimalistic. So, okay, so we thought of what could work with that. So, her song was had a very open, folky kind of touch to it. So we thought, let's stick to an acoustic guitar, um, an acoustic guitar, a piano, and very earthy, very spaced out thoughts in terms of the electric. So the electric guitar came in just to add very subtle uh, ideas there. So I'll give you a quick example of what I will not do the vocal line, because that is the song is not out yet. But I'll give you a quick glimpse of what I'm talking about. Give me a second. Okay, just a minute. Um, okay, so yeah, so I was saying we're talking about what is it that you want to achieve. So when you're working as a producer on someone else's track, especially, then it becomes very important that the person whose track it is, they have it very clear in terms of what they want. Okay, supposing they don't have it, then you try and sit with them and ask them. So it becomes a longer process sometimes, that you're sitting down, penning down what exactly is that they want to achieve, that you want to achieve with them through the song. But it is worth that time and that energy, because then in the long run, and when the output comes out, you can hear, okay, this is why it happened. When you're so there are two ways of listening to the song. One, as well, you're the creator of the song. The second, you're the listener. Now, obviously, what every listener will feel is always going to be very different. But if they can feel something through it, then you know that there is thought within that arrangement. So, okay, quickly running through that. So this first example I was talking about. Sorry, just a second. Can you hear the audio fine? Is that? Can I get a quick? Wait. Okay, great. Let's go. Right. So, my question to myself when I was thinking about the arrangement was what, okay, one was, what are the words saying? And just a second. Yeah. So my question was, what are those lyrics actually trying to say? And the lyrics had a lot of space, a lot of reflective energy, a lot of contemplation, and I felt like that needs to come out. So we thought of having a little shaker playing in the back as well, but somehow that shaker was taking away from the openness, even though the shaker was very minimal. Okay, so there's conflict. Minimal, but not open. So then you're looking at the entire picture as a whole. It's minimal, but it's not open. It's not giving the open feeling. So the other um, the other dilemma was, how should the piano work in this track? Because in this particular track, I felt like a string instrument, and in this case, either a nylon string or the acoustic. We chose the acoustic. We tried both. Uh, and the acoustic is basically driving the song. It's holding the song together. And then the piano is actually following or complementing the vocal line, because the piano entered much later, for example, in the arrangement. And so then you think about that. That's my next point. What are the various elements? What are their roles within the composition, within the arrangement? Now, what is the role? For example, we all have roles, right? Like someone in talking about music societies, someone's a president, someone's a VP, someone's a gen sec, someone's a treasurer. What are the roles? You're acting and you're reacting based on those roles, basically. And that's what excites me the most in the arrangement. It's challenging as well. You see, it's not a piece of cake. You have to you have to spend time with it. You can't just, I mean, not always. It's like, again, this is a very this is not factual. This is, I feel that with my arrangements, whether I'm producing it for someone or it's my own production, I personally like to spend a good amount of time with the arrangement so it settles into my system. This I feel for generally as an artist, when you're presenting a piece of music or a piece of art, spend some time with it, let it internalize and get inside your system so that it becomes a part of you, a part of your existence. Hence, it becomes very personal, it becomes you, basically. So, this is again, so as the song moves forward, um, it's following the similar direction, but let's see where it goes. Yeah. So it's for me. It's following a very river-like, water-like structure, and so I think it becomes very important to have an imagery in mind in terms of So when you ask yourself, what do I want to achieve? A good idea could be to try and actually note down what is it that you want to achieve through imagery, through words, through um, maybe through a drawing. If you like drawing, you can through words, through writing down what you're feeling. So in fact, with a lot of my students, I do this when they're playing a piece of music. I ask them to actually write down what they're feeling as they're playing. They hate me sometimes for it, but after the entire process is complete, they feel like they have become a part of the composition. And you see, for me, that is very important. You have to become a part of the arrangement, a part of the composition itself. So, with that, that is a few that are a few small pointers for arrangement and what in general. Uh, Also, I think it's very important to understand what your sound spectrum is. What are the various roles? Like I said, where are they in the arrangement? So, for example, the one thing that I used to go wrong with very often used to be my guitar player and me. Our spectrum, the range, the octave we were playing in, was very similar. So neither his parts nor my piano lines would uh, come out, would have presence in them because our parts were clashing. A lot later, it struck me that, okay, why is it that this production is sounding so big? And, very often I think this question has come out a lot to a lot of us young musicians. Why are our arrangement and our mixes not sounding big or wholesome? That's because there isn't enough space to breathe within the arrangement. I strongly, yes, Mukund Gupta wrote space, exactly. You know, you need to find the space and the breath. Okay, so when I'm talking, I'm breathing. Your song, your piece of music needs to breathe as well. It's an entity, it's an individual, so it needs to breathe. And it becomes the entire team or the individual or the artist's responsibility that, okay, is my composition breathing? The very often, especially I think within the collectives context, if I talk about it a little bit, the initial challenges we faced were that the arrangements live sometimes, I think, would become oversaturated, too much happening. Because I mean, okay, when you have a choir and a band, and when you have a lot of people on stage, it's very difficult sometimes to figure out how much not to play, because it's then you start thinking about, so as artists you have to think about the various elements and how much they actually need to play within that composition. So, which is why I was talking about understanding the spectrum: drums and bass, guitar, vocals. Why is it that when you're mixing a track, you cut the lows, except for say bass and the kick? Because that low end is being captured by the kick and the bass. Well, sometimes other instruments as well, based on what the structure is like. So, but understanding what the sound palette is and what you have to offer, basically. Okay, moving on to the next segment of this session is arrangement within Hindustani classical music. Now, this is a very tricky space because, as some of you might know, Indian classical music is heavily melodically oriented, not even though this there is harmony within classical music as well. For example, the tanpura resonates not just one note; it resonates two or maybe three, based on how you're tuning it. And in fact, all the microtones, those all come to form harmony as well. But generally speaking, Indian classical music is melodically driven, I'd say. And like, and a lot like jazz music, it is open ended in terms of improvisation. You don't write down the structure when you're singing a pure uh, classical. When a khayal vocalist or an artist who's doing a thumri, they are not writing down the structure as to, okay, I will sing my sthai 4 times, then I will take an alap for 4 cycles and move to the antra for 8 cycles. That's not how they work. So that's not how they have been brought up. So when you're working with Indian classical music and writing structures or writing an arrangement for that, you have to keep in mind that what is it that you want to achieve? I mean, okay, it's contemporary. Okay, so because contemporary arrangement, so contemporary Indian classical. Okay, fair enough. But Indian classical is a very heavy art form in general, and it is very emotionally driven. So for me, when my upbringing has been, sorry, my upbringing has been Western classical, piano, harmony. So when I was approaching it, my concern was that, and my attraction towards classical actually was the fact that uh, it is so emotionally driven, and hence I got very attracted towards that side of things. And naturally, when I was approaching it, there was a harmonic uh, structure to it, because I mean, I would play, for example, something my favorite. Um, oh, sorry, just a second. So there's this my one of my favorite lines of Rag Tilak Kamod, for example, is uh, which is so to say the defining uh, bit of Tilak Kamod. But uh, now for me, when I started working on it, for example, the thought was, it has a certain, okay, my question to me was, think of some keywords. What is it doing to you? For me, it had a very innocent, something very innocent about the rag. It still does. So I, in fact, spend a lot of time just on this line. Wait, let me see if you can see the. Yeah, okay. So there are so many possibilities harmonically within that uh, melody line, because there is so much. The emotional quality is so strong. You can act. Then you choose what is it that are you feeling? Are you feeling? Does it feel innocent to you? Does it feel? So that's why I very often, for me, um, in fact, sometimes when I think of chords, very often they're outside the rag, technically speaking, pure from a purist point of view. But for me, that chord or that harmony is a part of the rag. Hence, I am playing it. So that is one of the most difficult aspects of arranging for a piece of classical music, because you're thinking, okay, this is such a heavy art form. What can you actually do, uh, or a heavy rag for that matter? How do you present it in a way that you enhance the emotional quality and yet keep the the rawness, the rustic flavor of that rag or that composition alive? And okay, so I say it's a part of the composition. For me, that particular chord is a part of the rag. It And that's actually what the collective is for me as well. Different energies, which which probably aren't part of the same tradition, but they come together to enhance that tradition. So the tradition of Indian classical music, um, when it's being approached by a set of musicians who don't are aren't always part of that tradition from their childhood, but they are coming together to present that art form. So then becomes your responsibility that the art form itself isn't there is no deterioration, or we aren't destroying the rag. I mean, for that matter. So it takes a long time to actually think about, okay, this is the emotional quality. What do you want to achieve through it? What is this chord saying? Is this chord actually okay? So the for I people who know me, they know I love playing this chord, the fourth minor. Now I when I actually play this part live, I don't play that fourth minor chord in this line, because I feel like that the innocence needs to be established first before I actually even go into the next bits of it. So and that becomes very important to achieve, because you have to understand that uh, okay, so the rag has certain rules, the composition has certain rules. uh, you have to compose and arrange around it, and also keeping in mind that um, that this is the melodic aspect, actually, we're talking about that. Keeping those rules in mind, you have to try and enhance it now, and yet keeping the purity of the art form alive. So for us, especially in the collective, our goal is always that, especially the Indian classical elements, whether it's the vocalists, tabla, sitar, sarod, sarangi, melodic, rhythmic, and vocalists, all of them, they have to be strictly in the tal or in the rag for that matter. If they are there, then we start constructing ideas around that. Now, like I said, that was the melodic aspect of it. The rhythmic aspect of this entire thought is the fact that Western rhythm and Eastern rhythm are diametrically opposite. Teen tal, the most basic tal, is 16 beats, which and for the most basic beat for Western musicians is a 4/4. Four cycles of 4/4 come to form a teen tal. So for the longest time, I had this issue where when I was jam with a sitar player or a classical vocalist, that my cycles would end very early, maybe in 2 cycles or so, but their cycle would not. And for the longest time, I couldn't plays, okay, why is this happening? And then I figured that, okay, this is diametrically opposite. Um, and that, now how do you solve that? Now you see, if your upbringing has happened in the Western side of things, then you have to put in a lot more effort there to actually seep into the classical system. So for me personally, I spent 2013 onwards till date, I listen to uh, classical music every night for about 2 hours or so, so that the rag, of course, and the tal starts seeping into my system. So now when I'm playing, very often I am not playing to the drums. I am playing live to the tabla. Very often when he's playing his sum, or when he's coming back to the sum, my head, like when we're grooving, all of us, we know when we're live, we tend to groove and move with the beat. Then my body is moving with the tabla player, not the drums anymore, which is interesting. Earlier it was the opposite, but now it's not. And then again, then like I mean, if you might not know, so some of you might know that classical music, when I say it's very emotionally driven, we tend to not focus too much on the words. But that's something that I felt like we even with the collective, with my ensemble, we, I think for some time we didn't focus on the words too much. But we felt like, no, we're missing something. Our arrangement is lacking something because the words are not being focused on too much. Not everywhere, but some places this happened. But the moment the lyrical aspect is focused on, the arrangement has a lot more thought. एक पूरी नई शक्ल बन जाती है उसको, उसकी शक्ल क्या देनी है उसको. That is what excites me when I'm thinking of arrangement for an Indian classical composition. Then it comes down to, okay, so I think maybe before that, quickly play you guys one. Okay, so in fact, it's interesting how today is this session, and an hour back I received a few guitar files for our upcoming album. So I thought, and they're completely raw, so I haven't touched them as yet. So I thought I'll actually make you guys hear that, and how the thought behind that composition is. So again, this is not out yet, so it's a little. This is a track based on Rag Bhim Palasi, and initially the track had two female voices, but I began to feel like it needs more of the female character, and a diverse female character. So we have four different female vocalists, and I call them female, uh, well, entities in the composition. They bring out a very interesting color, which I think, and the energy which they bring out, I think, for some reason, I feel like this arrangement is not meant for a male vocalist. You try it out, but it's not meant for a main. Now, why is it not? Because the character of it feels like it's meant for a female voice, and the energy that they bring to the table. So, four female vocalists: tabla, flute, drums, bass, guitar, two guitars. Again, interesting. Uh, Two guitar players, a corner call section, which is again in harmony. So a quick sneak peek into this. My voice will go out for a second till it comes back for the track. I think you can hear me again, I suppose. Okay.
सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा नहीं चैन पड़त तुम बिन 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 जिया कर सारे दिन रैन जिया कर सारे दिन रैन अब आओ बसो घर अब आओ बसो घर सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा नहीं चैन पड़त तुम बिन 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 जिया कर सारे दिन रैन जिया कर सारे दिन रैन अब आओ बसो घर अब आओ बसो घर सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा अब मोरी बात
Right, yeah, okay. I thought Okay, thank you for the lovely comments. I'll just open the chat again. Thank you so much. Okay, so now as the arrangement moves forward, a lot starts happening, and for me, the one question which our producer for the album, Onindo Bose, asked me, why do you have two guitar players? And that was something that he asked me a long while back, and it took me some time. I told him, give me some time to answer that question, because uh, two guitar players in an arrangement which is already quite a lot is happening. Uh, why is he there? And then I figured that, okay, no, that answer came to me, I think, a couple of months later, because of what. So there's Shrikant Biswakarma playing one set of guitar, which is most of the chunk of the guitar he's playing, including that guitar solo which you heard. Also, just a heads up, this is an unmixed track at the moment. This is not a mixed track. This is all like this is not this is just my session, unmixed completely. So the second guitar player on this track is Abhishek Mittal, who is adding, whose thought is very different. Like uh, his thought on this track was that let's try and give us a slightly electronic kind of push to it. So if I mute the vocals now for a bit, just a second. Okay. So if we go on to just so here itself, if I look carefully, the piano is basically holding uh, a chordal structure for. So in fact, the piano and bass are doing that, holding the chords for the bandish, which again now this is ek tal, so this is 12, and now it becomes important that the tabla and drums in a case like this. In fact, I think in an arrangement for classical, the tabla and drums become very important, that they're actually moving together. If the tabla and drums, or tabla, drums, mridangam, whichever rhythmic element is playing in this track, or in any arrangement, they should be working towards it. I see it this way. For me, it's very important that they work as one rhythmic element. So tabla and drums should not cut into each other, or they should be sounding like one, basically. So if I play just drums and tabla, maybe. Now, so on this tabla on this track is by Mohit Lal, who's Advaita's, well, he was Advaita's tabla player, and so I thought, so Saptak Sharma normally plays tabla for us, but for this track I felt like I wanted someone who's thinking from a very edgy point of view. The tabla and drums have a very interesting conversation happening, I feel. It's very important for me that the elements in the arrangement are talking to each other. They need to be conversing in a complementary manner. No one is killing each other. Now, and then it comes down to the fact that, okay, since we're talking about the rhythm section, I'll first talk a bit in detail about that. Very important that we understand and respect the tone, the tonality that the tabla or any instrument actually portrays. So very often we have discussed this, that in a very heavy section, we shouldn't have tabla because it won't be justified there. We won't be able to justify, okay, why is tabla even there in the first place? Why is it there? This is a very important question. Why? Questioning yourself, questioning your arrangement at any given point is very important. And this becomes very important because then you're answering the questions yourself, because then your intent becomes even stronger. Tabla in this, so for example, since we're talking about Shrikant's parts, yeah, in the case of Shrikant's parts, tabla is actually playing with him and with Abhishek, for that matter. And then in Shrikant's guitar solo, tabla cuts off completely. Because why? Because that's a very heavy part where the tabla won't be justified at all, for that matter. So it becomes interesting as to why is tabla there, why is tabla not, how much is tabla playing, how much is it, and same goes for drums. So okay, so Raghuvansh asked me, locking with the guitars? No, they're playing, well, not locking throughout, but like in the middle section. If I just quickly put. So here, tabla is. He's not playing a full theka. He's not playing. Yeah, so not locking, but mirror. Like they're sort of in like conversing. They're walking with each other, basically. You start walking together. You aren't cutting. You're walking parallelly, basically. And yeah, in a way, like a delay in some ways. And then it now if I talk about, for example, the guitars, the two guitar players. So one is playing almost like a nice pulsating kind of. So Abhishek is playing just a pulsating thing, and Shrikant is playing these little these notes around it. Now live, this is what happens, but for the album I asked him to play an extra layer which is of the chords. That's, and I mean, so but live, how we would normally play it, Abhishek would play the line, the pulsating line. Shrikant would go around playing the notes, and I would be playing chords. Now, if I'm playing chords, there is no need for a second instrument playing chords at that moment in the minimal sections. In the heavier section where he gets into drive, then of course it is a different case, but there it's different. Here we don't need a second element. So then you ask yourself, how much do we need this element at all? So okay, that comes on to the chords. Why am I playing those chords there? Well, there was one chord which is not part of the rag, and it's still there. Why is it there? Because for me, that last line of the yantra, which they sing, it elevates. So we need a chordal idea which also elevates for the composition to elevate as well. So let me just play the vocals and the piano now for you.
सुनरी सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा तुम बिन नहीं चैन बलमा नहीं चैन पड़त तुम बिन 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 जिया तरसाए दिन रैन जिया तरसाए दिन रैन अब आओ बसो घर बाब आओ बसो घर बसो
Yeah. So ab aao baso gharwa. Now that line again goes off the. So it technically, from a purist point of view, the purist will say that ये तो राग में है नहीं. But as an arranger, for me, it's my responsibility that I understand the rag enough, or I keep understanding it before I even approach the chordal structure. I don't touch a chordal structure in a classical composition until I have spent some time with it, because it needs that kind of attention and that kind of time for me to actually get into it. Okay, before, so this is something I've this is something that Pandit Kumar Gandhar once said that you see, just a second, sorry, I'll just come back to the Gaurav's question. Yeah, so he said that before you play around with any rag, first understand its basic foundation. Because he himself used to he had his own approach towards classical, and he had a very distinct approach towards classical, which is something that I actually very strongly I feel very connected to it, and that's something that I felt like it's important that every composition needs to take some time. So something like Rag Champakali, which we've done. Champakali is a track which I heard just the rag for 2 years before I attempted working on it. Because I hadn't learnt it, but I needed to imbibe that. So when you're thinking of chords, a chordal idea, a harmonic idea in classical, I think it's very important that you spend time with the rag and the bandish first, so that it becomes a part of you, and then you start thinking of it in a choral structure, in a way that it's enhanced, and in a way that it enhances the overall production of the track. Moving on, the next part is what I like is the breakdown, which is what I like calling the departure. And this one is actually where Santur Kundu comes in with his conical, and we thought just one conical wasn't feeling right. So we thought, let's try a couple of things out with this. So this is interesting because I felt like the departure, we hadn't gotten into it. So like this is one. The conicals are running. No, it's not a DT. It's a lot more than that. Santur has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tracks running, including 8 tracks with the DTs happening. Now, the point is that we felt, as a unit, we felt like we haven't gotten into Bhimpalasi enough, as instrumentally or vocally. So the what you heard vocally, also they took some time to really sit down, and I felt like the second half needs to be a lot more like in your face, out there, and a lot more Bhimpalasi. And so it needs to get aggressive, but tastefully aggressive, basically. And we felt, so this conical actually, I felt like added the dimension which we needed to like take a break from the bandish, explore the tal a little bit, because ek tal, and explore the rhythmic aspect. Maybe not ek tal, because he's singing the conicals, but and then back to the bandish again. But now when they come back to the bandish, our thought was they should get in with a lot more rigor at this point. You hold back in the first section. In the second section, you come back and attack the composition. And that is when we felt like, okay, now they should come and really go aggressive with the track. So the improvisations and the variations changed here, and it was important, so that we felt like the band and the vocalist need to sort of now, it needs to stick, how like glue. So
सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन 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 सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा नहीं चैन पड़त तुम बिन 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 जिया कर साई दिन रैन जिया कर साई दिन रैन अब आओ बसो घर अब आओ बसो घर
So again, sorry, I think the levels went a little here and there. I'll play it again from.
सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा नहीं चैन पड़त तुम बिन 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 जिया कर साई दिन रैन जिया कर साई दिन रैन अब आओ बसो घर अब आओ बसो घर सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा सुन सुनरी सुन सुनरी अब मोरी बात बलमा
So tabla goes off here.
अब मोरी बात अब मोरी बात बलमा बलमा अब मोरी बात बलमा
So there, basically, we all start holding. So when the vocal alap start, that's when there was a bit of a confusion. There was a bit of dilemma. So our drummer Dimple was asking me, should we go all out, or should we, like, what's the approach? And I said, see, the point is, if you start playing roles or fills with their vocal alap, then nothing will stand. Neither their vocal improv, their tam sargam will come out, nor will the groove. So then we thought, let's hold this part like one nice solid foundation. Let's give it a foundation for the vocalist to sing on, because it's important that we don't forget what the root is, which is Bhim Palasi, which is the composition. And then when you're giving it that attack, Then, I mean, that's when from the guitar solo into the vocal up, it now we start hold. So basically, we lay a foundation enough that the entire composition and the entire arrangement is being held together. Hence, so this is one track of a very different, like, this is Bhimpalasi is like, let's say, more aggressive in a way. It's more electronic rockish. I don't know what to call it just yet. You can think of something if you can let me know. But so that is one approach, which is one thought. Every track has a different thought, intent, very important. Are you thinking enough about what you want to achieve? Now, what you're hearing now, this track we began working on it in 2019, April, March, I think. And now, this is a month back when it now sounds like this. Because I personally feel like every track is your baby and you need time to let it grow. You need time to actually let the idea become a full releasable production, basically. So that is one thought. Then that is again. So that was one in terms of. I'll play one. I will try. We'll work on one more idea, I think. Let me see. Okay, something very different then. This is again from the second album which you're working on. I think this is drastic from this one. So just a second, give me a minute. Okay, so this next one I'm going to do. We'll talk about is based on a rag called Chayanat, and very interesting, very very sweet rag, and again now I had heard this composition a while back, and then I began to think about what does it do for me. Same questions. You see, the questions you're asking yourself are similar, but the answers will obviously be different. And so on this track, we have acoustic guitar tuned in open tuning. It's not in standard tuning. Bass, there's tabla, ghatam, sitar, flute, keys, and the choir. So Varun Rajashekharan, he suggested I think a very good suggestion, in fact. He said, I don't think I hear drums on this. And Dimple himself said, I don't either. I don't think we need drums for this track because what it's saying is very important, and the drums will take away from that thought. Also, I mean, you have to ask yourself, does it need this? Does it need that? So, for example, some of you might have heard one of our tracks called Shankara and Tilak Kamod from the first album. They both didn't have tabla on the album version because at that time the arrangement which we approached didn't have tabla on it for those two tracks particularly. But it's important. I think you need to keep revisiting your expression because how you arrange it in 3 years back, you obviously been evolving as a person and musically as well. So you need to keep exploring and re-exploring. Otherwise, you'll become mundane and you'll get tired of what you're doing. So coming back to Chayanat, on this we have on vocals for this we have Pandit Bhunesh Komkali. He's a very senior classical exponent from and this is a very delicate arrangement because in this song we are focusing very heavily on the words. Also, a very different approach to Rag Chayanat. And in this, what happened was that the choir is sort of in certain places moving away from the rag. So, okay, I'll quickly play for you. I'll talk a little less and play for you now. Sorry. Okay.
Ga ma re ga re sa, ga ma re ga re sa, ba sa re ga ma re ga re sa. Re ga ma re ga re sa, re ga ma pa re sa re ga ma pa pa re ga ma pa re ga ma pa ma ga re ga re sa, pa sa re ga ma re ga re sa, pa ma ga ma re ga re sa. नहीं आना तुम आते हो जी, 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 एक दिन बन ठन कर मिल जाते, एक दिन बन ठन कर मिल जाते हो, नहीं आना तुम आते हो जी, नहीं आना तुम आते हो जी, एक दिन बन ठन कर मिल जाते हो, एक दिन बन ठन कर मिल जाते हो, नहीं आना तुम आते हो जी, नहीं आना तुम आते हो. लगन लगी अब बुन से तुम्हारी, 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 काहे याद हो हमारे दिन भूले हो, नहीं आना तुम आते हो जी, नहीं आना तुम आते हो जी, एक दिन बन ठन कर मिल जाते हो, एक दिन बन ठन कर मिल जाते हो, नहीं आना तुम आते हो जी, नहीं आना तुम आते हो जी, एक दिन बन ठन कर मिल जाते हो, एक दिन बन ठन कर मिल जाते हो नहीं आना आते हो जी नहीं आना तुम आते हो जी नहीं आना
Once again, thank you for the lovely comments. There, I could thank you for all the lovely words. First and foremost, I think this arrangement and why I chose this and Bhim Palasi was because two drastic thought processes happening. This one, the intention was to keep the simplicity of the composition and the rag alive. So it's not too long. There's not too much happening. Yet there is. So now in this one, the question was when we were starting the alap, I think Bhuvnesh also said, let's not have a simple akar ka alap. Let's actually tell everyone what Chayanat is in the most simplistic form through the alap, which is why he sung it in the sargam form, and he broke it up in a way that by the time the composition starts, every listener actually, including us, knows what Chayanat is. Hence the very simple alap, not too much happening. Flute and sitar sort of subtly playing around with him there. And in fact, I think for me, this composition felt like in standard tuning, tabah ho jayega. Like it would just destroy the feeling of the so for guitar, I mean. So we chose for this one, we won't go electric. We'll go acoustic for this. And Shrikant and I thought let's do an open like an alternate tuning idea for this. And open tuning, the song is on D sharp. So I mean, we thought we'll play around with that. So for me, when the song begins, when the arrangement begins, we have the ghatam and tabla, which are actually driving the entire flow of it. So and then because the composition is the simplistic nature of it, we thought the theka, teen tal ka theka should be nice, simple and lyrical. So Mahavir on tabla and Varun on ghatam. And I think the approach was that the theka, the rhythm section, should be lyrical as well, because we're running behind. Our goal is to encapsulate and to enhance the lyrical aspect of the composition as well. So with them, and then I think with that we had a very interesting guitar line, which the guitar enters when the choir enters. So yeah. So I think I felt like for me, the what drives this song is the acoustic and the two rhythm instruments. And now, if you notice the choir in the now again, their harmony is sorry. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So sorry. So when you're playing with harmony in classical, or when you're actually not in any arrangement, when you're working on a harmonic structure, you're actually thinking about which voicing or which note in that harmony is where. So for me, all the major seventh, all the sevenths of each chord. So and that becomes important. Can you hear what in the harmony do you want to actually present? And then you sketch the structures around that. So if I hear just a choir and Shrikant, for example, the acoustic and the choir. And then moves to the star solo.
लगन लगी अब न से तुम्हारी लगी.
Now, the interesting part in the antra, which is tricky also, but not at the same time, is for me, it's the most interesting part is that the antra begins on the seventh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Lagan lagi is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, lagan. But the interesting part is for the choir, that 7 is the first count of the phrase. So the choir, so in fact, the Eastern instruments, tabla, ghatam, sitar, and flute are playing all they start, that's their seventh. But for Shrikant, bass, me, and the choir, that's the one. So that was interesting because the vocalist could hear the tal, but they had to almost bypass the fact that that's happening because so you see, for again, I'll just play that.
लगन लगी अब न से तुम्हारी लगन लगी अब न से तुम्हारी लगन.
So Ab Unis Se is the actual sum, the one of the track, which is when the phrase finishes for the choir and for all of us. So that was the rhythm structures were like that, but they were still stuck together because initially there was certain problematic in terms of how to align it, but then it made sense because from 7 to 16 it made sense, and back to that as well. So I'll quickly play. Okay, so this is my favorite part in terms of what's happening for guitar. No, my second favorite part for guitar, and it's interesting. So the harmony. So we have two structures of harmonies happening here, basically. So that's just the guitar. Now adding the choir to them as well. Okay. Okay. So there, I think that for me, okay. Now, why this part? Because I think my gospel influences came here very strongly because we had like a set of cluster harmonies happening here. Uh, the voicings are different in terms of what I'm playing, what Shrikant is playing, and what I mean, same voicing, but the emphasis is different from the singers, him and me, and that's what I think gets the exciting part of this going. For that matter, if you ask me, um, and yeah, so that was once again. So if I play it again,
लगन लगे अब बुना से तुम्हारी लगन लगे अब बुना से तुम्हारी काहे याद हो हमारे दिन भूले आना तुम बात हो जी नहीं आना तुम बात हो जी एक दिन बन घन कर मिल जाते हो एक दिन बन घन कर मिल जाते हो नहीं आना तुम जी नहीं आना तुम आते हो जी
so I think it became important that at one point the choir leaves those harmonies and joins the composition, then to emphasize on because the lyrical aspect is basically is about coming together and an old kind of friendship, which was the lyrical content of this bandish is so interesting that they talk about nahi aana tum aate ho, quite interesting line as well. So you weren't supposed to come today, but you still came. The mantra is that you've forgotten our friendship and our bond because you found new people. And you've come today after so many years behaving as though nothing has ever happened and we're still the same old friends. And now we wanted that aspect to reflect on the arrangement as well. Hence, they come back together. And for me, the ending is very exciting because so this is where the open tuning actually worked the best, because Shrikant here, so it's a pure classical bandish, but we tried a very folk guitar kind of line there at the end. So quickly, I'll play that for you. So there's a DT happening there, but we wanted that the DT has slightly different contrasting rhythms happening, so that एक जो झोल होता है ना, जो that movement, double time movement suddenly starts happening. So I'll play the guitar and then I'll quickly add in the rhythm section, so you can get an idea of what's happening. I mean, this was truly why I felt we should spend time with compositions, because this part wasn't there earlier. Had we released this track a year back, we still haven't, but if we had, this part would not have been there. And that's why I think it's important to let compositions breathe. So quickly, this last bit. Yeah, so that was yeah. Thank you so much. So that was, it was important that these aspects get spoken about, because these are as important as the final song as well. And for me, the acoustic guitar does it. Like, that's what makes me smile. Like when he did those bits, we tried a few. I had a few ideas, and obviously I couldn't play it for him, but I sort of asked him, "You can try this, you can try that," and then he suddenly thought, "Let's try a folkish idea," and I think that just clicked. For me, that's something that makes me smile in the composition as well. And so, yes, thank you so much. With that, I finish talking and, well, sharing what I had to, and would love to have some questions in now. So, Gaurav had a question initially. Oh, wait, there's a question box. Okay. Okay, Shivank Gupta. Okay, Prithvi from YouTube asks, Sir, I have grown up listening to mostly prog, jazz, funk. The classical, what artists would recommend to listen to in order to understand this? Okay, so this genre, I would say, for someone who's getting into listening to classical music for the first time, uh, I think a balanced approach in terms of, I would not say listen to a very, like a complete purist approach initially. You see, you actually want to try and like and connect with the art as well immediately, right? So I would say the first idea would be to listen to maybe a couple of contemporary acts. So there are the older ones. So then there's been Mrigya, there's been, well, my favorite, Advaita is, I think, I have grown up listening to, and they are there. Then there are some Carnatic artists as well. At the same time, listen to some pure classical artists. So you can listen to Pandit Venkatesh Kumar. There is Pandit Ulhas Kashalkar, Pandit Kumar Gandharv. Then there is, for instrumentally, you can listen to Ustad Shahid Parvez. There are so many artists out there, and I mean, uh, there's you should, I mean, for people who are into instrumental music, definitely listen to Pandit Nikhil Banerjee. He was a revolutionary for his star, especially because there's Ustad Vilayat Khan, and so there are, you listen to a variety of artists, uh, which who are contemporary yet, and then some who are from the purist side of it as well. So you get a balanced approach, and you see, you can't approach it from, like, you can't listen to a very heavy piece of music on day one. You need to build up to that. Baby steps to listening as well. So yeah, that is how do you select.
Right. So next questions from Aditya. I'll read them out to you.
Sure.
How do you select what rag to compose your piece around, which would complement your ideas? Like, is it just pure instinct and experience, or do you bend your ideas around the rag?
So very often we have, for example, a chordal structure going, or say like a guitar riff, or on a piano idea, uh, which might be around a certain rag, and so then we're like, okay, so ye rag ho sakta hai. We can try and see. Let's see if this rag might work, might not work. Sometimes it's what they call a mixture of, like, a mixture of few rags. So like, it's not purely, say, Tilak. It might be like a Mishra Tilak Kamhod, or like a Mishra Bhairavi, for example. So it's, you see where those ideas are flowing, or they're flowing into. Sometimes we have the bandish, or we have a composition, and then we start arranging around those ideas, for example. That's a different approach. And then if we have a track in Shut Kalyan, which is called Bajore again, and that then we thought, let's compose around that. In this case, in Shayanat's case as well, we had the composition, and we wanted to sketch the arrangement around that. So yeah. Okay. Okay. Do you have any tips for writing Hindi lyrics and melodies over Western compositions? Okay, so I am not the best person to go for lyrics. I stay away from that aspect. I enjoy the thought process behind lyrics. Like, recently, I've really gotten into the lyrical aspect, the lyrical context. But I myself stay far, far away from lyric writing. I am not the best person to ask for this one for. Sort of Day from YouTube.
Yes, yeah. Hello, Anirudh. Lovely session. How do you finalize the chords among such beautiful possibilities? You played on the same melody.
So, thank you, Saurav. Thank you so much. Like I mentioned earlier, when I'm thinking of chords, I'm thinking of color. I'm thinking of what is the composition saying, what is the emotional quality that the rag is portraying for me personally. Um, and then through that, I start designing the chordal ideas. Would this chord work? Is this chord killing the feeling? What is the feeling? What are chords? Two or more elements, which means two or more people for me. Chords are like people for me. Are they blending or are they not? So if the chord blends with the melodic structure, if the chord feels like it's a part of it, instinctively, we flow with it.
Okay, so Gaurav Sharma had asked earlier, what are the most frequent non-diatonic chordal tonalities you end up using when fusing music with rags, if any?
So very often, to so what happens is that I personally feel like I want to keep the rag as pure as possible, which is why very often we have to end up playing very diatonic based harmonies. For example, and there's the apart from that, then that's one aspect. Then there's, for example, then the track Champakali has a very interesting harmonic. So that the rag is. Wait, let me put the piano. This EP is troubling me a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So this rag is the chords you put in this are slightly hybrid. So there's and then in a composition like this, you need that mysterious, even aggressive feeling. So we go. So when I'm talking about chords, very often I'm using slash chords very often. So for example, with a forward slash, so like a F slash A or a D slash A or G. Very often I'm using the seventh with the fifth. So like. So like for example. To give that slight edge, so which also helps me to give out the root of the melodic structure and the chord which I want to express through. So yeah, that's what.
Okay. So now, Mukund Gupta had a bit of a correction to his previous one when he was talking about lyrics. He said, "Sir, apart from lyrics, I was also talking about melodies. Do you have any tips on blending Indian sounding melodies with Western compositions?"
So when you have Indian sounding melodies, so when I have an Indian sounding melody, I try and see what my instrument can do with it. So for example, the piano, which is my focal instrument, I can't do a mean, I can't bend the note, right? Unless I use a pitch bender. But I don't use a pitch bender. So I try and see how best can I uh, sort of play that Indian melody using now. I through Western what does Western music have as its biggest weapon? Harmony. We for me enhancing in Indian melodies through chordal structures, and this has been happening for ages. Like the film music, when it was a long time back, film music was heavily based on classical. Some of it still is. Uh, it's always been very nicely orchestrated through harmony because Western music has the ability to enhance the melodic structure and the flavor that the melody has. So I personally like using that the most, which is harmony. I mean, uh, and that's my personal approach. I mean, it's very subjective, of course.
Right. So next we have Gaurav Sharma. When is an Anirudh Varma solo piano album coming?
It is. So I think he wasn't in college when the first one came out. I think he was in school probably at that time. So 2016, I had released my first piano EP, a 6-track EP called Melancholic Rhapsody. It's still on. I mean, I learned very late that you have to how to share music even after releasing it. So I was very bad at it. Now I've learned
Right.
that tool.
It's an
But
entire different thing to.
yeah, it's a completely different ball game. But this second like a there is this lot of solo, like a lot of people I've been pushing myself and been wondering why it hasn't, but it is on the verge of coming out. The solo piano EP is almost there. It's EP slash album, EP, not album. I think that'll be hitting it too far, but at the moment. But yeah, like my piano, the pianist in me has been itching to come out for some time. Hopefully, very soon.
Right. Okay. So now we have a question from Harshit, and it's very similar. Harshit and Hoimontic's questions are a little similar in terms of what they're asking. The Harshit asks if you could share some tips. He said it's really informative session. I am being a beginner keyboard player on the basis of my personal experience. Could you share some important tips of playing keyboards while performing live? Similarly, Hoimontic has asked for some suggestions in simple melody in composing in any genre. Like simple melody with a little bit of variation makes it sound more interesting. Could you suggest some tips? So
Okay, so the first tip as a keyboard player, what is listening? You have to keep listening. So very often, because like since I was in school and college as well, I used to actually sorry, just a second. Yeah. Uh, I used to accompany a lot of vocalists for solos, duos, especially when I was in DU. Very often, very often we didn't rehearse at all. We just, I just, they said कि ये गाना है, and I said एक बार गाना सुना दो, like over the phone or something, and then I used to, like there used to be so much happening that I just couldn't rehearse, which also means your ears have to be constantly active. One thing would be for keyboard players is that listen to as much music of a different variety, of a different genre as you can. That is very important. The more you're listening to, the more you're taking in. And one thing that I've done over the years is play with a song, like sit with a song, any song that you like, say 2 songs in a day maybe, and work out the actual harmonic structure, the actual chordal ideas which are in the song, and then try and reharmonize it. Reharmonize it, basically make it your own, change out the harmonic ideas, and play around with that. That is something that really helps live, and it helps develop your ideas. And because live you're reacting, you don't have time to think. It's like you have a millisecond of a moment. What will happen next? Sometimes it won't work. It hasn't worked with me also, but sometimes it works really well because your ears have to be constantly very active, basically.
right. For our next question, Prithvi from YouTube asks, I'm a huge fan of your work, sir. I wish to learn Hindustani classical vocals. Could you recommend any good teachers or institutes in Delhi?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. In Sunny classical vocals, there is Ujjwal Nagar. Um he is in South Delhi, and he's also there's also in Delhi. There are a few. I mean, there's one person whose name I'm actually forgetting now. To be very honest, there was. I mean, if you're starting out, you can also. I mean, a good person to go with could also be say Saptak Chatterjee as well. Because he's a good person to he's but he's in his 20s, so he's a good person to start out with and get pushed in the right direction. If you ask me outside, I mean, wait, that was in Delhi, right? He asked Delhi.
The question asks about, yeah, in Delhi.
Okay, there's Ujjwal Nagar. There is Ram Narayan Jha. There is I mean, when it gets advanced, then there are a lot more senior teachers there, of course, as well. But okay, this is a tricky question. I normally have the answers on my fingertips. So there's so much happening that but we can share these as well. You can DM audio file, or you can DM me, and we can write about this as well.
Yeah, Anirudh is tagged in all of our promotional media that's gone up. We will also share his. I think Shivang will share his Instagram username in the live chat below, in both on both Airmeet as well as YouTube, so that people can refer. And yeah, so you could contact him.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. Mukund on Airmeet asks how.
Oh, sorry. Gandhar Mahavidyalaya. If there's Pandit Madhav Mudgal, who is in Delhi, and he is a fantastic teacher. I mean, I just suddenly remembered, so that I'll tell you. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Moving on to the next question, we have Mukund asking how do you find more collaborators and people to work with in the music industry? This is a very good question that a lot of us have faced.
I've since the collective was formed, and even before actually. So when I was in DU, what is the one thing that Delhi University gives us that I frankly feel no other university in the world can give you? Diversity. You will find people from all walks of life, from all cultural backgrounds, which is what I personally I was hoping to experience after school into college. And when I entered college, I met so many people, some seniors, some juniors. For example, the core band of ABC is Saptak Sharma from KMC, Shaumitra Thakur Sitar from Hindu. Sorry, there is the Prasanna brothers from Ramjas, Dimple Kumar from Hansraj, and Pavitra from LSR, and Kavya from Hansraj again. So the idea is, and for example, even after I finished my BA and was doing my masters, I was trying to be as close to the DU circuit to actually find the choir that we wanted, the best, the most engaging people in the DU scene. For that was the starting point. And so how do I do that? So I went to go for competition, see who's singing what, and write to them, send a WhatsApp or send a message on Messenger or Instagram. That was step one. Step two was began to write to collaborators from different parts of the country, and then that led to more collaborations outside the country. So we did one recently with Canada-based artist Abby Wee. We did a track called Rang. And that was I've always thought, let's connect to artists that is write to artists, share your music in a very genuine way. Just share your music genuinely, write to them, and if they write back, good. If not, okay. I mean, you have to write to them with the correct spirit. नहीं लिखा वापस तो you don't The world doesn't come to an end. You have to keep driving your art and keep connecting to people, and you'll find the right space. And so keep writing. You'll get. I mean, if you saw my sent versus inbox ratio, you will laugh because there is a lot. The ratio is. I mean, it's obviously become better over the past 3 years, but I mean, trust me, you have to be at it. And also, why do you want to collab? Not the collaboration also very unfortunately a very glorified thing. Keep in mind that when you're collaborating, you're following certain ethics. You're following very certain straight up ethics about co-ownership, about keeping it open-minded. Open-mindedness is very important in a collab, because you have to let go of certain things, and it's always a learning. So keep these realistic points in mind, I feel.
Right. So a question that might come up at some point, but in addition to this, would be for the other way around. Like this what you asked was what you answered right now was when you're looking for collaborations. What if it's the other way around and you are someone is trying to look to join a collective? For example, if someone wanted to get into AVC or wanted to be considered, so what would be the procedure that they should go through from your side?
Simple. So it's very simple. You just send an email on avcofficialindia@gmail.com with a video, audio, a bit about yourself. Share the audio with us, and we keep, and this is like it's a yearly thing, which keeps happening all the time. We keep. I mean, currently the collective is 165 musicians.
Wow.
From India, USA, and Pakistan.
Wow.
Musicians, and then there is the entire the visual artists and filmmakers, and just write to us. And I've actually been saying write to us as any art form, because the idea of the collective has been to bring the art community together and keep supporting each other. So
Yeah, even people like dancers and all.
yeah, absolutely. We have this. It's been pending because it needs a right thought. Like dancers, we have been talking to, and it almost worked out. Now it hopefully is working out, but I won't say till you see the final thing.
Of course.
But yeah, keep reaching out, keep connecting, and when it clicks, it clicks.
So how much of this, like, this would also translate to other projects as well, right? If someone wanted to.
Absolutely.
Okay, so another question we have is from Aryan from YouTube. He is asking, do scale and range matter to get into singing professionally? Like, is it okay if one can sing only on C sharp and below?
Absolutely.
Right.
Gaurav
Sharma. All right. Sorry.
Sing where you sound the best. Sing where you're comfortable. Singing high, singing low. You sing where you feel the most comfortable and yourself. End of story. And don't worry about range. As you practice your art more, your range, and as you age, as you get older, sometimes your range drops, and it's a constant. But work on doing what you can best in your current range and scale.
Right. So now we have Saksham and Daksh from YouTube. Can you please name your 5 favorite accidental or fancy chords?
There's one. So sorry. This chord. It's a major minor. It inspired me from a rag called Vasanti, which is sorry. Let's just. And so 1 2. So my right hand is 1 2 5, and my left hand is. So my 1 2 and 5. So is my right hand. My left hand is 1 and flat 6, and then this. Then there is
It has a very tense quality to it.
the first one.
Really badly wants to be resolved. Yeah.
So this is basically a C major / B flat major 7 minus. So I don't, I ignore the third. I don't do, I do, and right hand is C major. And there's this is a so this is, what was this? I've forgotten the name it's called also. Something very hybrid. So I mean, he asked for how many 5. I've done 3 as yet.
Two both.
This is around E flat 6 with a E flat 6 / 9 / 11. I don't know. So it's actually no, it's E flat sus 2 with a 9th 11th. Sorry, with a 7. Then so 1 and flat 7 on the left hand, 1 2 sharp 4th 5th right hand. I mean, there are so many. I can't. Those accidental chords happen in the moment.
It would take away from the entire experience if you were to name any 5.
Yeah. There are.
It depends on the context, right?
It's in the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, this question got buried a little bit. Rajit Power asked, Sir, other than the emotional touch which you feel with the Indian classical music, is there any other thing which drives your interest towards Indian classical music? Or like basically, other than the emotional touch, is there anything else that drives you towards Indian classical music?
Sorry. The rhythmic simplicity yet complexity. It's interesting because it's simplicity yet complexity, and how the spirituality of it, and how closely it is connected to nature. For me, I mean, you get I what intrigues me the most is how people get lost when you're presenting a piece. I mean, if you listen to the legends, they're just into it. There's nothing else. They're into it on a very different. And most importantly, I think the theatricality of Indian classical music. So the theatricality that exists within the musicality of Indian classical, that is something that really, yeah.
Right. Amog asks, what was the thing that drove you to start the Anirudh Varma Collective?
A couple of things. One is that I was heavily getting drawn towards classical music. Post the piano EP, I felt like I needed to explore classical and I felt drawn towards very naturally. And I also felt like the word collective. See, Anirudh Varma could be anyone. The collective is what is the aspect which. So I was doing my MA and I was writing a research paper on the collective. The collective can be 2 people, but can be 160. The idea is how do 2 energies of a different kind come together and form one. How does the one? How do I and the other come together and form that? That's one aspect of it, which is that the collective aspect of it. And the other was how I really wanted to present Indian classical music in a way that was me and my collaborators in a contemporary yet rooted format. I wanted that I wanted classical music to reach out to as many people as possible. I've always wanted this because if you listen to classical compositions, the composition ideas are so beautiful and singable as well. But if you make it singable in the right way, not diluting the rag, making it popular, making it available for everyone to listen to across the globe, making it universally, because younger people take the 1 hour long the performance is a lot to take in. So how and the idea was I wanted to push people to listen to maybe our music and try and find the original Bandish. So this happened with Tilak Kamod when we released it, and a few months later I saw that someone said I incidentally heard. I went to look for the traditional Bandish in Tilak Kamod, which you guys presented. See, that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to preserve a tradition in our way, yet respecting the rawness that exists within the culture and the tradition as well. So these two aspects, the collective aspect of it and the Indian classical aspect of it, coming together, forming the identity that currently is the collective. Also, most importantly, I think now at this stage for me, the art community working together and supporting each other at all given points in time. That is something that doesn't happen very often, and I feel a little bad about the fact that we need to support each other and working in one. So we have a team of 10 filmmakers, very different people, but on purpose I make them work together. I'm a laro, fight for all I care, but I wanted to resolve that conflict as well. That conflict resolution, coming together as an art community, is what the collective is currently focusing on. Sorry, lamba ho gaya thoda sa, but
By all means, yes. Okay, Gaurav Sharma, this is not much of a question, this is more of a demand or possibly even a threat.
ABC Jazz collaborations, please.
Yes.
It'll happen when it has. It'll happen when it has to happen. I can't. I always say this. It'll happen. I'm sure it'll happen.
Yeah.
Now that I'm teaching at GMI as well, it might happen sooner. But it'll happen when it has to. But yeah, thank you.
Another tidbit from Gaurav Sharma. Also, this is not a question. I don't think there's a question. Also, the fact that we're all Indians, knowing your roots will always sound natural to us. Yeah, okay, so it's more of a statement. Also, the fact that we are all Indians, knowing your roots will always sound natural to us, or it should.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, you will hear the Indianness, I would say, the lack of a better word, in the sound. I mean, see, like when I'm teaching piano or I'm teaching music, I'm teaching them in a very Western classical tradition, because I see the basics, the fundamental of it has to come the right way, right? You find your identity after a point in time. I've trained and I've given my diploma, blah, blah, blah. But as a pianist now, even as a solo pianist now, I don't call myself a Western classical pianist anymore, because I'm not. My sound, I feel it's a very hybrid. I'm trying to find my sound, and it's a very hybrid thought. So I mean, that's what I'm. The Indian in me will always be there. So hey,
yes. Okay, there are two more questions that have come on YouTube. Prithvi asks again, sir, what other Indian indie acts do you listen to? Any particular artist whose work you're really impressed by?
Indie artists. Oh man, this is
Indian indie acts specifically.
Yeah. Pakshi. I mean, see, Pakshi is. We've grown up with Pakshi, so I mean, okay, let's just.
She would have also been a college band back when.
Same. When our band was called Hansraj Project / Subculture. So Pakshi, we were the same batch. So I mean, we've been friends and I mean, two of them, and they were played except for Parthi. I think they all played.
You've also played with Pakshi in IIT Kanpur, I think, 2000.
Oh yeah, that was one of the most toughest gigs ever. I mean, I was never that nervous in my life, I think.
That was brilliant. I think it was Balma, the section. There's an extent.
Yeah.
You and Akshat have a.
That was a good gig for me, because it it's almost like I did an EC audition again after so many years. Because I mean their sound is so, and the thing is what I love about them is their discipline.
They've got a very precise sound. That's how I would describe.
Very, very, very disciplined, very precise. And you see the thought is there. You know that okay, they're not bullshitting. There are so many fusion acts there. Why does Pakshi stand out? Because they have that drive in the right direction, basically. And very disciplined, man. I mean, I think that's one thing I love about Pakshi.
Yeah, but
Yeah, so I mean that's Pakshi. There is wow, okay. Another Tanner. For sure. I love how they approach their sound. How many 5 names you said?
no, just any India acts you listen to.
Um
5, 23, like,
I don't know, man. There are the Shadow and Light. Then there is
oh yeah.
there are some in Bombay. The Thurman and a Quarter, Backstrat Blues. Wow. Okay. Submarine in Space. Okay, then I mean, see, that's I've grown up with these. I mean, they've been all like contempt, like our peers, literally. I don't know. There are some very nice singer-songwriters coming up. There's, I think, singer-songwriters in Delhi and even like outside Delhi. I actually look at so far sounds how they bring out very interesting artists all the time. Then there is, I mean, then the senior guys. You know, then there's I won't count Indian Ocean and that. Anyway, they are established.
They're a different league altogether.
Huh. So then there is Taisha Kohli. There is Sheel, who's I think in your age group.
Sheel Sagar.
Yeah. Very interesting.
He's also being featured in one our event.
Yeah. I saw. Shit, I'm forgetting. I will. I mean, just like I think Gaurav wrote.
Get ready to take 5,000 names.
Yeah, there is.
Ka naam lena padega, lol.
Yeah, you don't know. Like there's too many people you know. No? I mean, it's such a close knit circuit. No, I mean, you end up meeting.
Yeah, it's more of a fraternity than a circuit at this point.
Yeah,
everyone
exactly.
knows everyone.
Yeah,
right.
There is. Then Revisit, of course. I think that is the name. I don't know.
Yeah, that was the second name you took.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, there's so many. I mean, I'll give you. I'll put a list one day on Instagram because.
Do we be sure to tag us? We'll also share.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Right. So actually, when you mentioned Pakshi and Hansraj Project Subculture and all that, a little thing came to mind is that most of us, especially the band circuits, now we have actually written our compositions and we take a very big influence. We take a lot of inspiration from what the bands before did, like whether it was Subculture, Hansraj Project, whether it's songs like Madhur Ganam, those ones, whether it is other bands that are a little bit later, like Common Thread and all. So
Common Thread, yeah.
Yeah, so all in all, it's very...
Yeah, because that's the best part about the DU scene, that even when we came to college in 2013 and all that, I mean, there was that time we were listening from what KMC was, they were called Music. The band was called Music as well at that time. No, that's just what I mean. Yeah. They're still called Music. I mean, the band was called Music as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think even now the band is called Music only.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Season was cut short thanks to COVID. So
yeah, man. So I mean, in our third year, especially second and third year, it was actually crazy fun because there was Hindu, Stephens, KMC, Ramjas, Hansraj, and one more. Conundrum? I'm forgetting which college they were from.
PGDAV.
These bands, they're at every fest, and we even like a brotherhood and very close friendship and stuff like that. And so yeah, I mean, we were always influenced by our seniors, and I've actually been keeping a watch on the new bands in the college scene, because the energy, what I like about every college band and every music society is that every batch brings their own energy to the table. That's the best part, I think. Okay. So yeah, thank you. That's
yes. Palash, sir, how can we improve our knowledge about jazz piano playing and jazz chords?
Listening. I've always said listening is very important, and breaking down chords very important. And so, like when you hear a chord, which note is ringing out for you, which I mentioned in the session as well. Which chord is ringing out for you? That's very important. And so keep listening, and keep exploring, and keep trying out ideas and of your own as well. And with that, and of course, theory. I mean, it can be boring, but we can make it interesting as well.
I think we'll take these two as our last two questions now. So Mukund asks yet another question: how to come up with chord progressions which communicate how you are feeling? Basically, is there any way to turn how you feel into chord progressions? If yes, then how? I think this relates a little bit to the question you just answered with chords and hearing them. But anyhow,
Yeah.
question.
See, chords are like colors. Colors and what we call ras and bhav. Ras and colors emotion is feeling, and back to chords. It's so if I make a drawing, chords, feelings, emotions, and it all goes round and round. So the chord you're playing is what you're feeling. Now you have to sit down with yourself for a bit and say, okay, what chord is it that I'm feeling right now? Sit with it. It will come to you in some time, but keep playing these chords, and you keep exploring those chords which are feeling, and the right one will feel the right one. I mean, so um, think about what is it that I'm feeling at the moment. Think about it in colors. Those colors can then translate into chords.
Right. Okay. So this last question is by Sanjana. Did you ever have to scrap an entire project or an idea? Basically, how do you keep improvising your song and not getting stuck on one idea? Now, just 1 second. I kind of have to not disconnect, but I'll mute and just cut my video for like 2 minutes. But
Sure.
yeah, that's the last question.
Okay. Yeah, I have scrapped my project so many times. There's a track called Alhiya Bilawal, which we completely scrapped after working on it initially, and we worked on it again after 2 years after 1.5 years before the album came out, and it was so many. See, the thing is, you work on so many ideas. Some will work, some will not. You have to keep exploring and also sometimes it feels like you've overworked or you've overkilled a certain idea. Give it some rest. Okay, so you work on an idea, it's not going anywhere naturally. Give it some time off. Take some time off. Take a break. We from friends, we have in space. The song is your friend. Give it some space. Take some space from it yourself. Come back to it and see how you're feeling about it. And some will work, some won't. So many songs that we currently have 10 from one and say 10, about 18, 19, 20 tracks roughly the collective has in its repertoire. At least 25 have been scrapped. So that's a part of who we are. All of us artists, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think with that was our last question.
Great.
So that kind of brings us to a close. Is there anything you would like to share, just in general, something that didn't really fit in with the rest of the session, and maybe you were hoping would be asked but wasn't asked?
Not particularly. I think I'm glad that this is people are actually coming to ask these questions, because I mean, I think it's important to constantly question your art in a healthy way. I mean, to question why, because so that the intent is constantly fresh. The intention should always be driving you, basically, and that is why I think for me, arrangement is about letting the composition breathe. For me, and specifically Indian classical arrangements, it's even more because the responsibility is to let the tradition come out in a new way, but in a rooted way. So if we all work towards, and I think one thing is that I think we should all work towards striving towards quality. Not, it's very easy to put music out and to put content, unfortunately, the word content.
Yeah.
But be a little strict with yourself in terms of what you are putting out, what you are not. Don't just put out for the sake of putting out. Say, like, give yourself some time, let the ideas brew into bigger things, and then put things out. Because there's just too much stuff to digest. I mean, to take in right now on social media. Give yourself some time. I think, like, I like people, like, give yourself, like Taisha Kohli, for example. She released a single today, and I think I respect her because she takes her time, which was 1.5 years, but you put it out when you feel like your song is sounding ready to be published. So be patient, be at it, be at it, man. And yeah, that's all.
Okay. So in that case,
Thank you so much for having me. It was
definitely.
it,
I was just about to say that. Thank you so much for coming. This session would not have, for very obvious reasons, would not have been possible without you. And it's been a great insight into not just the arrangement style of Anirudh Varma Collective or your arrangement style, into the subject as a whole, and to certain other things around the circuit that we have also learned.
of
So
course.
thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Always a
Uh,
pleasure. I
yeah.
mean, I think it's
And
important to share an experience. I mean, we share what we. It's, I think, as seniors and as people, we've been where you guys are,
yes.
and we've learned over the years, and I think it's important to share what you experience, so that mistakes that we made, you guys don't make, and stuff like that. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you for coming. For those of you who joined in a little late, the entire session has been streamed to YouTube, and that should remain available even after this is over. Um, please stay tuned. At around 5 o'clock, we're going to be going live with a session with May and Sean of Made in India. And tomorrow at the same time, we would be going live with Abhay Sharma for the second workshop under the Not a Masterclass series. Stay tuned. Thank you for coming.